You wake up face down in a pile of itchy straw, which is better than face up because at least the lice stay off your eyelids that way. Congratulations, you are officially a medieval peasant. The year is 1383. Your mattress is a sack stuffed with something that used to be straw, but is now mostly mouse poop and regrets. The sun hasn't even peeked over the horizon, but you're already being screamed at by a rooster that sounds like it swallowed a trumpet and then died. Your back hurts, your knees hurt, and for some reason, so do your eyelids. You're in a one-room wattle and daub hut with your entire family, a goat named Joan, and 3 chickens who are extremely not house-trained. Your job this morning, like every morning, is to stay alive long enough to complain about it. You rise, if that's what we're calling this slow, joint-cracking, arthritic movement, and immediately step into a puddle of something wet and probably alive. This is your medieval version of a shower, soggy foot in cow urine. There's no bathroom. There's no sink. There's no mirror to look into and ask yourself where it all went wrong. Just an outhouse that's basically a hole in the ground where secrets go to die. But today is special. Today is not just any day. Today is the annual Harvest Festival, a time of gratitude, celebration, pagan hangovers, and, if you're lucky, only one person catching fire. You are extremely excited. Not because you're happy, of course. You haven't been happy since the thatching collapsed and took your pig with it. No, you're excited because today there's food. Like actual food. Not just gruel, not just barley porridge flavored with hope. Food with spices. You know, like garlic. Maybe even a stolen onion. If the local lord is feeling generous, there might even be, and brace yourself, cheese. Real cheese. Made from something other than despair. So before we get too comfortable, and before I describe in excruciating detail how much you will sweat under your woolen tunic, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy the unhinged historical sleepwalk I'm offering here. Leave a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love knowing which corner of the planet you're relaxing from or which shift you're trying to survive. Back to the hut. Breakfast is edible. Barely. You eat a hunk of dark rye bread, so dense it could be used as a murder weapon. You chase it with some ale, because the water will kill you faster than the plague. Children are drinking ale. Grandmothers are drinking ale. That chicken? Also drinking ale. Your teeth are already bad, so chewing is mostly a form of punishment. You gnaw and gnaw until your jaw gives up and you just swallow the brick hole, praying for divine digestion. You toss on your festival garb, which is your regular tunic, but with slightly fewer holes. It's a coarse wool blend, the kind of itchy that would get an Etsy seller arrested. Your shoes are made of old leather, cracked and stiff, and they're only about 70% the shape of your foot. This is medieval orthopedics, just limp and deal with it. Outside, the village is coming alive. That is to say, people are coughing, spitting, swearing, and wandering around looking for that one goat who always escapes. The sky is gray, the mud is generous, and the air smells like someone lit a candle made of cow farts and fish heads. But there's music. Sort of. A guy named Wulfric is playing a flute he carved himself out of a sheep bone. It sounds like sadness. A drunk uncle slaps a drum made from a stretched pig bladder. The rhythm is off. Everything is off. But it's festive in that charming, chaotic, slightly diseased way. The church bells ring. The Lord Steward, a man who smells like goose fat and anxiety, announces the start of the festivities. He has 3 teeth and a list of things you're allowed to do today: dance, drink, and not complain about taxes. Especially not taxes. The actual harvest has already been reaped, of course. That was weeks of back-breaking labor involving scythes, curses, and sunburns so severe you're still molting like a snake. But now it's time to pretend like you enjoyed it. The Harvest Festival is your one sanctioned day of peasant joy, the medieval equivalent of live, laugh, love, except with mud and a higher chance of death by ox. At the edge of the village green, a bonfire crackles. That's where you'll roast things later: apples, meat scraps, probably someone's eyebrows. Nearby, a table has been set up. It's decorated with dried herbs, poorly carved vegetables, and one very angry badger. Someone tried to dress up for the occasion. There's dancing. If you've never seen medieval dancing, imagine a mosh pit with fewer teeth. There's lots of stomping, clapping, spinning, and near concussions. You try to join in, but your ankle gives out immediately and you land in a puddle of cider and goat droppings. Congratulations, you're festive. There are contests too. One involves who can carry a sack of grain the farthest without herniating something vital. Another is just watch the jester fall over repeatedly, which is less a contest and more a reminder that medieval comedy was mostly person falls down. We laugh. You try not to think too hard about how many jesters have died doing exactly this. The local lord makes an appearance. He's wearing a velvet tunic, actual shoes that fit, and a smug expression that says, "None of this food is for me, but I'll wave regally anyway." He gives a short speech thanking God for the bounty, his peasants for their labor, and himself for being born rich. Then he vanishes back into his stone manor, where the wine flows like blood at a pig slaughter. Back at the festival, a group of children are playing a game that mostly involves throwing turnips at each other. It ends when someone cries, which means it's a success. A woman is spinning while shouting insults at her husband, who's trying to build a maypole but keeps forgetting which end is supposed to be up. Lunch is served. You are given a wooden bowl. Inside is a stew. It contains exactly 4 identifiable ingredients: cabbage, beans, something vaguely resembling pork, and whatever fell in accidentally. It smells like hope and flatulence. You eat it all and call it delicious, because your stomach is currently empty enough to echo. Then come the miracle foods. Someone roasted a goose. Someone else made a pie. A pie. With real flour. You take one bite and start crying. You haven't tasted butter in months. Is this what happiness feels like? Is this what angels eat? You don't know. You're too busy sobbing into your plate. Someone plays a lute. Badly. Another person plays bagpipes. Worse. It sounds like 2 ducks arguing inside a wine barrel, but nobody minds. The ale is flowing. Someone is dancing on a table. Someone else is vomiting into a bush. A third person is doing both, and you applaud them. Children are chasing geese. Geese are fighting back. You watch a 6-year-old lose a fight with a goose, and consider how fragile human dominance truly is. As the sun begins to set, the festival reaches its peak chaos. There's laughter, arguments, attempted romance, and one very enthusiastic man trying to juggle turnips while blindfolded. You are wrapped in a wool blanket, staring at the fire, belly full of beans and barely alive poultry, and you think, this is the best day you've had all year. A neighbor sits beside you. He offers you more ale. You accept, because hydration is a myth. He tells you about the time last year when someone lit the outhouse on fire by accident. You both laugh. It was funny. The smell was not. Behind you, a group of drunk peasants are reenacting the harvest using interpretive dance. It's mostly falling down and screaming. You give it a 7 out of 10. Then come the stories. Old tales, passed down through generations, about harvest gods, spirits of the fields, and that one cow who gave birth to triplets and then kicked the midwife in the face. You listen. You doze. You drool a little. It's fine. You're surrounded by people who smell worse. The stars begin to emerge. The fire crackles. Someone is softly singing a lullaby in a language older than the village itself. You lay back in the grass, your limbs pleasantly sore, your belly full, your spirit slightly less crushed by the eternal grind of feudalism. This is what it's like to attend a medieval harvest festival. It's loud. It's messy. It's confusing. But it's also one of the only times in the year when people get to laugh, eat well, and pretend, just for a few hours, that life isn't mostly suffering and agricultural taxation. You close your eyes. The sounds fade, a flute, a giggle, a distant scream, that might be celebratory or goose-related. You drift off to sleep under the stars, wrapped in a smelly blanket that once belonged to someone who died of something unpleasant. But that's a problem for another day. Sleep well, peasant. You've earned it. You wake up under a cart. You're not sure whose cart it is, or how you got under it, but one thing is clear, your mouth tastes like something fermented, dyed, and then applied for citizenship in your throat. Your skull is doing a drum solo with no rhythm. Every sound is too loud. Every movement is a betrayal. The harvest festival is over. What remains is mud, scattered bones, a smoldering fire, and you, curled up next to a goat who may or may not now be your spouse. You roll over and immediately regret it. Your stomach stages a protest. Your joints refuse to cooperate. Your tunic smells like cider, sweat, and poor decisions. A chicken hops on your back and pecks your head. You're awake now, officially. Welcome to the hangover edition of medieval life. There's no ibuprofen, no greasy breakfast sandwich, just pain, shame, and the echo of bagpipes still ringing in your skull. You stand, slowly, carefully. The village green looks like the aftermath of a very confused war. Someone is sleeping in the maypole. Someone else is face down in the pig trough. The jester is missing a shoe, and most of his dignity. You step over a puddle of something that was probably soup and or vomit and start the long, humiliating walk back to your hut. Along the way, a child throws a rotten apple at your head and shouts happy harvest. You do not retaliate, mostly because turning your head that fast might kill you. The sky is aggressively bright. The birds are mocking you with their cheerful chirping. You reach your home, a tiny, lopsided hovel that smells like wet hay and betrayal, and collapse inside. The straw bedding is still damp. The fire is out. Your wife is already up and boiling something in a pot that smells like sadness and onions. She looks at you like she's seen this before, and she has every year. There's no pity, just chores. Did you enjoy yourself? She asks, voice flat as a millstone. You nod. That's your first mistake. Your head throbs so violently that you actually whimper. She hands you a cup of water. You stare at it like it's poison. It might be, but you drink it anyway. You might survive. You might not. Either way, the pigs still need feeding. This is the reality of medieval joy. It comes with consequences, and those consequences usually involve bodily fluids and livestock. Breakfast is, once again, bread and ale. It's always bread and ale. Sometimes there's cheese. This morning, no cheese. Just crumbs and judgment. The goat watches you chew with mild contempt. There's a knock at the door. Well, more like a thud. The door is mostly a plank tied with rope. You open it to find your neighbor, Osric, holding a basket. He grins. He's missing more teeth than you remember. Leftovers, he says. You peer inside. It's unidentifiable. Probably stew. Possibly animal. Definitely cold. You take it anyway, because this is medieval generosity, lukewarm mystery in a wicker container. Osric tells you about how the blacksmith danced naked on the well cover and how someone accidentally set the cider cart on fire. You nod. You remember none of this. You suspect he might be making it up, but at this point, memory is optional. It's time to clean up. That means raking the village green, repairing the damage, collecting spoons from the mud, and finding whoever passed out in the church vestibule. It's a team effort. Someone sings a cleanup song. You hate them immediately. The local priest arrives to bless the remains of the festival. He sprinkles holy water on the ground and glares at the maypole, which now leans slightly to the left and has 3 pairs of underpants hanging from it. He mutters something about sin and temptation, but nobody listens. Your feet hurt. Your back hurts. Your soul hurts. But the good news is that you're not dead. And in medieval Europe, that counts as a win. As the day goes on, the village slowly returns to its usual state of damp misery. The decorations come down, dried herbs, woven corn dolls, and that one guy who thought he was a scarecrow and hasn't spoken since. The animals are herded back into pens. The children are scrubbed with what passes for soap, mostly ashes and scorn. And then, there's the festival leftovers. This is the part you live for. You, your family, your neighbors, all gather in the commons for the second feast. It's not as luxurious as the main event, but it's still a step above the usual gruel and weeping dinner combo. Today's menu includes congealed meat pie, surprisingly edible, half a roast parsnip, stolen from a nobleman's discarded plate, apple mash, fermented slightly, accidentally alcoholic, something that might be a pigeon, or part of a pigeon, or just shaped like one. You eat it all, because calories are rare and regrets are cheaper. The stew tastes like a warm apology. The pie tastes like survival. The apple mash tastes like regret. And then there's silence. That heavy, exhausted silence that settles over a village when everyone is too tired to argue and too full to fight. It's a rare piece. Even the goats are quiet. You sit beside the fire pit, watching embers drift into the darkening sky. Your youngest child climbs into your lap. She smells like hay and onion, and she's asking if the harvest festival will come again soon. You lie. You say yes. But you know that before the next one arrives, there will be months of labor. Of rain, of cold, of endless scraping in the dirt for something to eat. The Lord's men will come again. The taxes will be worse. The weather will be cruel. The lice will remain undefeated. Still, for one day, you danced. You laughed. You threw turnips at a moon dressed like a shrub. That's worth something. Night falls again. The stars return. The smoke of 100 fires coils into the air. Somewhere in the village, someone sings a harvest song, off-key and with entirely made-up lyrics. It's terrible. It's beautiful. You lie down in your damp straw bed. Your joints crack. Your head hums. Outside, the wind whispers through the thatch roof and carries with it the fading scent of roast goose and apples. And for the briefest moment, just as you close your eyes, you almost feel content. Then the goat farts. Loudly. Right beside your head. You deserve this. Sleep, peasant. Tomorrow, the grain stores await. You wake up before dawn, because of course you do. No alarms, no snooze button, just the unrelenting rhythm of medieval life, which can be best described as wake up, suffer, repeat. Today isn't a festival. Today is Tuesday. You know this because your knee hurts worse than usual, which is how peasants keep track of the week. The fire has gone out in the hearth again, which means you start your morning freezing and furious. You stumble around in the half-dark, trying to rekindle it with damp twigs, dried moss, and sheer resentment. It doesn't light. It mocks you. You swear at it quietly, so your children don't learn new vocabulary. They already know too many curse words in Old English. Eventually, your wife saves the day with a burning splinter she stole from Osric's house next door. Again, she's the real hero here. You're mostly just in charge of carrying heavy things and being disappointed by root vegetables. Speaking of which, it's your turn to cook. Not because you're good at it. No, nobody's good at cooking in the 14th century. Cooking is less of an art and more of a desperate, smoky battle between your hunger and a limited supply of edible items, many of which are just barely not poisonous. But it's your turn, because your wife is outside skinning a rabbit, and the children are busy collecting chicken eggs, half of which may or may not be rocks. You glance around the hut. Here is what you have. A dented iron pot that doubles as a helmet during raids. A wooden spoon, permanently stained with something suspiciously red. 3 turnips, one of which has a face. A lump of barley flour, so solid it could serve as medieval body armor. Salt, because miracles happen. And, what's this? A pinch of dry thyme? You feel powerful. You chop the turnips. Not into elegant cubes. Not even into slices. You more or less convince the knife to participate in a series of aggressive stabs until the turnips are now a pile of chunks. Into the pot they go. Then comes water. Not clean water, obviously, that's for royalty and hallucinations. Your water has things in it. Floating things. You try not to look too closely. You boil it anyway. Anything still alive in there is now soup. You add flour to thicken it. It doesn't thicken. It just turns into a beige sludge. You pretend this is what you meant to do. You throw in the thyme like a wizard casting a spell and stir with a look of vague authority. The children are watching, so you act confident. You taste it. You immediately regret that decision. It tastes like despair, salt, and bad decisions. You try to fix it by adding more salt. It now tastes like salty despair. Congratulations. Your wife returns. She looks into the pot, then at you, then back at the pot. She says nothing, just takes over, adds a bit of lard, some herbs she's been hiding from you, and 3 secret ingredients that may or may not include actual flavor. Suddenly it smells edible. Magic. So let's talk about what cooking really meant in the medieval village. First of all, you don't have a kitchen. You have a fire pit in the middle of the one room you share with everyone you love and at least one animal you hate. The ceiling is black from decades of smoke. Your lungs? Also black. You don't have a pantry. You have a sack. Maybe a shelf if you're lucky. Your spices, if you have them, are stored in little cloth pouches like enchanted relics. Nutmeg is worth more than your shoes. Pepper is basically powder gold. Garlic is a delicacy. Onions are a miracle. You survive mostly on bread, pottage, and occasional fish that smells like it should have been buried 2 weeks ago. There are no recipes. Recipes are for literate people with paper and time. You cook the way your grandmother did, by instinct, by smell, and by ignoring the screaming. And let's not forget bread. Bread is life. Bread is law. Bread is 70% of your personality. But it's not fluffy, golden, Instagram-worthy sourdough. It's dark, hard, and so dense that if you drop it on your toe, you may never walk again. You eat it anyway. Because what else are you going to eat? Boiled nettles? Oh wait. Yes. Boiled nettles are dinner on Thursdays. Let's do a quick inventory of your weekly food options. Monday, barley gruel with a side of I'm still hungry. Tuesday, root vegetable stew, now with extra roots. Wednesday, fish, if the river cooperates, it never does. Thursday, nettle soup, bitter and cleansing in the way despair is. Friday, fast day, you pretend not eating is holy and not just budgetary. Saturday, ale counts as food. Sunday, maybe, you get meat. Probably squirrel. Possibly rat. You may be wondering, but what about dairy? Great question. You get milk, once in a while, from your goat, who hates you and expresses that hate through kicks and constipation. Cheese? If you're lucky, and it's more solidified sour milk than anything you'd recognize as cheese. Still, you'll eat it. With joy. Possibly with tears. And yes, there's butter. But it's not golden, creamy spreadable delight. It's crumbly, off-white, and liable to melt if you look at it too hard. Still, butter is a treasure. It's used sparingly. You once saw a mun trade a wheel of butter for a piglet and a marriage proposal. Let's talk feasts. Because now and then, harvest festivals aside, you do get a community feast. Usually after a wedding or when a cow dies of natural causes, read lightning, plague, or rage. And then, my friend, the menu expands. Roasted meats. Thick stews. Pies filled with things you can pronounce. Ale that doesn't taste like feet. Maybe even dessert, which is a strong word for some dried fruit and honey crammed into a crust, but in medieval terms, that's Michelin star cuisine. You remember one such feast. The butcher's daughter got married to the Thatcher's second cousin, and they served roast duck. Actual duck. Not kind of bird-shaped thing with feathers. You ate until your stomach stretched. You wept openly. You still think about that duck when times are hard. But most of the time, cooking is a desperate game of what can we boil without dying. You use pots blackened from decades of fire. Your knife is dull. Your spoon splinters occasionally. Your herbs are often just leaves you think are edible. Your cookbook is oral tradition and stubbornness. And yet, somehow, you survive. You eat. You even enjoy it, sometimes, especially when it doesn't bite back. Dinner tonight is your wife's corrected version of your disaster stew. It tastes decent. The turnips have surrendered. The barley adds thickness. The thyme is detectable. You chew with purpose. The children are quiet, which is how you know they're not actively plotting mutiny. Even the goat is satisfied, chewing something from under the table that no one dares to identify. After dinner, you wash the pot. This means scrubbing it with ash and sand until your fingers are raw and the pot is mostly clean. You dry it with a cloth that hasn't been cleaned since the last eclipse. Then you place it back on the shelf next to your two prized possessions, a wooden bowl without cracks and a spoon that hasn't betrayed you yet. You sit by the hearth. The fire crackles. Your belly is warm. Your hands hurt. Your head is clear. You close your eyes. And for one brief moment, you think, maybe tomorrow, I'll try baking. You won't. But it's a nice thought. Sleep, medieval chef. You did your best. It's bedtime. Again. Not that bedtime means what you think it means. In your modern life, bedtime might involve brushing your teeth, fluffing a pillow, maybe even a lavender-scented candle and some ambient whale noises. In medieval life, bedtime is just a moment when the sun is gone, the fire is low, and you finally surrender to the darkness and hope nothing chews on your feet before morning. You stretch, which is a mistake. Your back sounds like a collapsing cathedral. You wince. Your shoulder clicks. You're 27, which in medieval years is basically 93. Your body is a patchwork of pain, held together by boiled grains and bad luck. Tonight, like every night, you go through the sacred ritual of trying to sleep without being devoured by fleas. You crawl into your bed, and by bed, we mean a wooden frame with ropes across it, covered in a sack stuffed with straw and shattered dreams. You do have a blanket. It's made of wool. Scratchy, damp, and possibly half alive. Your pillow is, well, it's a bag, filled with more straw. You try not to think about what else might be in there. Mice, fleas, a vengeful spirit, all equally possible. As you settle into your itchy cocoon, you become acutely aware of the sounds around you. The wind howling through the thatch roof, which has exactly 3 holes and one very determined squirrel. The goat snoring in the corner, loudly, obnoxiously, and with more nasal authority than any human being. The baby, grunting softly in the darkness like a piglet trying to start a revolution. Your eldest child whispering to himself, possibly summoning a demon. Your wife grinding her teeth in her sleep, which sounds like someone trying to start a fire with their jaw. You close your eyes. You try to sleep. You tell yourself you are tired. You need rest. The cows won't milk themselves tomorrow. But sleep does not come easily in the Middle Ages. First, the bed bugs. You feel them crawling. Always crawling. You slap your arm. Nothing. Just paranoia. Or maybe victory. Either way, they win. Then, the lice. Because of course you have lice. Everyone has lice. You are lice royalty. You once tried to shave your head to get rid of them. They move to your eyebrows and mock you from there. You itch. You scratch. You try not to move too much, or the straw pokes your ribs like tiny medieval bayonets. Still awake? Great. Time for a nice, relaxing night terror. Because in your time, the night is not peaceful. It's haunted. People in the Middle Ages believe the night is full of spirits, ghosts, demons, forest creatures, witches, nightmares that walk. The old hag that sits on your chest and makes you wake up gasping. Sleep paralysis? Not invented yet. That's just Satan doing yoga on your sternum. You pray, briefly, just enough to confuse the spirits. You say a rhyme your grandmother taught you. Now I lay me down to sleep, hope the devil doesn't drag me by the feet. Not helpful, but tradition. Then there's the cold. Oh, the cold. You curl up like a rotting cinnamon roll. The fire has died. The frost creeps in. You pull the blanket tighter, but the wind finds you anyway, poking through cracks in the wall like a ghost with bad intentions. You think about getting up to rekindle the fire. Then you remember what it's like to step on a cold dirt floor barefoot. You stay put. You shiver. You imagine warmth. At some point, you doze off. Briefly. You dream of hot baths and goose feathers and mattresses that don't try to stab you. You dream of modern things like toothpaste and pants that fit. And then, just as you're finally drifting into unconsciousness, clang. The church bell. Midnight. Why? No one knows. Maybe someone died. Maybe it's just Tuesday. Maybe God's drunk again. You startle awake. Your heart pounds. You hear footsteps outside. A dog barks. Somewhere, an owl screams like it's being mugged. You lie still, eyes wide, certain the devil is about to break in and ask for rent. Your wife mutters in her sleep. She's dreaming about cheese again. You know this because she says cheese aloud, softly, and with surprising affection. You try to go back to sleep. But now your brain has decided it's time to panic about the grain stores. What if they spoil? What if the rats get in? What if there's mold? What if the Lord increases taxes again and demands half your barley just because his horse sneezed on a Tuesday? Your mind spirals. You calculate how much dried peas you have. Not enough. Never enough. Eventually, sleep comes. It arrives like a poorly trained horse, clumsy, late, and liable to throw you at any moment. And then, crash. Someone just knocked over a bucket outside. Possibly a drunk villager. Possibly a ghost. Possibly both. You groan. You roll over. The straw pokes you in a new place. You give up. You stare into the dark. You count fleas. You try not to think about death. Or taxes. Or the weird boil on your elbow. Congratulations. You've survived another medieval bedtime. But it's not over yet. Because in just a few short hours, probably before the sun even rises, someone will bang on your door yelling about sheep or pigs or an emergency involving onions. And you will rise. You will groan. You will sigh. And you'll say the ancient peasant phrase, "Not this again." Sleep tight. You wake up to a sore throat, a cough, and the unmistakable feeling that your internal organs are having a mutiny. Congratulations. You're sick. Again. But unlike modern illness, you don't have tissues, NyQuil, or a telehealth appointment with a woman named Stacy who gently tells you to drink fluids. No, this is medieval sickness. And in the 14th century, illness doesn't just make you miserable, it threatens to unmake your entire existence. There is no calling in sick. You have work to do. Every day. Forever. So you do what any self-respecting medieval peasant does when your lungs are trying to leave your body through your mouth. You ignore it. You get up. You walk outside. You feed the chickens with a wheeze and a prayer. You try to milk the goat, but you sneeze mid-squeeze and it kicks the pail across the yard. You consider death. Not dramatically. Just practically. Eventually, someone notices your cough sounds like a rusty gate and insists you go see the local healer. Which is medieval for a person who once read half a sentence from a Roman medical scroll and now carries a pouch of dead frogs. You arrive at her hut. It's cozy in the way an abandoned mine shaft is cozy. The walls are lined with bundles of dried herbs, cracked pottery, and mysterious jars of liquid that could be anything from honey to human tears. She greets you with a knowing nod. A humoral imbalance, she says. You have no idea what that means, but it sounds impressive. She squints at your tongue, pokes your belly, then waves a chicken feather near your face and declares your phlegm is rebellious. Fantastic. You are now at war with your own snot. Before we go further, let's take a moment to really appreciate the foundations of medieval medicine. The medical system you're depending on is built on two brilliant concepts. The four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Pure guesswork made sound scientific with Latin. According to medieval thought, your body is basically a soup. If the ingredients are balanced, you're healthy. If they're off, you're sick. Too much black bile? You're melancholic. Too much phlegm? You're sluggish and sad. Too much yellow bile? Congratulations, you're now officially choleric, which is medieval for kind of a jerk. The cure? Balance the humors. How? Option 1, bloodletting. Yes. The go-to fix for most things. Feeling faint? Bleed. Dizzy? Bleed. Headache? Bleed from the ankle this time. For variety. Bleeding is performed with a knife, a leech, or a guy named Bernard who once saw a barber cut someone and figured it couldn't be that hard. You're laid down on a bench that smells like old meat and despair. She pulls out a tiny blade, dips it in something that probably used to be wine, and nicks your forearm. The blood flows. You feel worse. But now you're slightly lighter, so that's something. Option 2, puking. Inducing vomiting is another cherished tradition. Maybe your body just needs to get it out. You're given a syrup made of mustard, vinegar, horseradish, and what she calls digestive encouragement. You don't ask. You drink. You instantly regret. The hut spins. The herbs on the wall start judging you. You eject everything you've eaten since last Tuesday. You feel worse. Which means it's working. Option 3, a poultice. She smears something brown and steaming onto a rag and slaps it on your chest. It smells like onions, garlic, spoiled ale, and betrayal. You lie there while it soaks into your pores, hoping it's pulling the sickness out of your lungs and not simply turning you into soup. She chants softly, possibly a prayer, possibly just the ingredients to a pie. She burns sage. You cough harder. Then she hands you a little pouch of dried herbs. You're told to steep it in hot water and drink it 3 times a day. She says it will realign your energies. You nod, because arguing with the only woman in the village who can name more than 2 body parts seems unwise. You go home. You collapse into bed. Your fever rises. You sweat. You shake. You hallucinate a goat playing a lute. You wonder if this is the end. Spoiler, it might be. Let's pause here for a moment and zoom out. Because if you think you've got it bad, wait until you hear about some of the actual medieval diseases that you may encounter on a regular Tuesday. Dysentery, your insides liquefy. You dehydrate while seated. Everyone around you pretends not to notice. Ergotism, caused by moldy rye. Symptoms include convulsions, hallucinations, and sometimes your fingers fall off. Leprosy, your skin, nerves, and social life all gradually rot. People throw rocks at you. Not ideal. Plague, the big one. The superstar. The Beyoncé of historical suffering. You get boils, fever, and then usually death. Quickly. St. Anthony's fire, a rare treat where your limbs burn, go numb, and then fall off. Possibly ergot again. Possibly Satan. No one knows. And of course, if you're a woman, every illness you suffer might just be hysteria. Diagnosed by a man with dirty fingernails and no medical training, who might recommend marriage, leeches, or exorcism. Back to you. You survive the night. Barely. The fever breaks sometime after midnight. You wake up soaked in sweat, mouth dry, blanket stuck to your body like a moist, itchy shroud. Your wife places a damp cloth on your forehead. It's the medieval version of Dayquil. You sip weak broth made from something that might have once been a chicken. You nibble bread. You live. And then, because this is the Middle Ages, you're back to work. 2 days later. Still dizzy. Still coughing. Still leaking from various orifices. But the fields won't plow themselves, and if you don't help with the harvest, your children don't eat this winter. There's no recovery period. There's no convalescent leave. There's just, you survived. Good job. Now back to the barley. You know deep down that the illness will return. It always does. It waits in the water, in the air, in the goat that keeps licking the ladle. But for now, you breathe. You move. You work. You endure. And when you hear someone sneezing behind you, you don't panic. You simply whisper the ancient phrase passed down through generations. Not my problem today. Rest easy, brave soul. You've made it through the plague of the week. Ah, the harvest festival. The highlight of your year. The crown jewel of medieval existence. The one time the village collectively agrees to stop moaning about boils and broken thatch long enough to eat something that isn't just gruel with a twist. You survived planting, weeding, back-breaking labor, and a spiritual journey through medieval illness that left you leaking from at least 3 orifices. But now it's time to celebrate. You wake up on the first morning of the festival with a sense of cautious optimism. Your joints still ache. Your toes are slightly blue from last night's cold. But you're alive, upright, and your wife hasn't accused you of hiding her good turnip spoon. That's what passes for a win around here. You dress in your finest outfit, which means the same tunic you wear every other day, but now you've picked off most of the goat hairs. You smell vaguely of hay, garlic, and feet. But so does everyone else. You're in fashion. Outside, the village is already stirring with that peculiar blend of chaos and vague optimism only seen during feast days and mild uprisings. The air is thick with wood smoke, the faint scent of roasting meat, and something you really hope is cabbage. Children run barefoot, shrieking like feral chickens. The baker's boy is already drunk. It's 9 a.m. Let's pause here. Before we dive into the merriment, take a moment, if you're still with us, to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this particular brand of sleep-inducing sarcasm. And leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is, whether it's midnight in Berlin, 3 a.m. in Manila, or you're lying on your couch in Ohio pretending to sleep through this. We see you. Now, back to the festivities. The Harvest Festival isn't just a party. It's a sacred rite. A way to thank the divine forces, be they Christian, pagan, or the mysterious saint of fortunate turnips, for not killing everyone this year. It's also, more pragmatically, a way to drink until your knees stop working and you forget how many of your children are yours. Preparation begins with offerings. The villagers gather the first and best of the crops, the biggest apple, the least wormy onion, a loaf of bread that doesn't resemble a brick, and carry it to the village church or shrine. It's a holy gesture of gratitude, and also a way to subtly show off your potatoes. Then comes the decorating. Wreaths of dried flowers. Stalks of wheat tied in bundles. Garlands made from vines and panic. Everything gets festooned. The church door. The fence. The goat, who looks alarmed but festive. Even the maypole, which no one remembers the purpose of but everyone agrees looks excellent in ribbons. And now, the feasting. You sit at long tables made of planks balanced on barrels. You eat off wooden trenchers, which are sort of like plates, except they absorb sadness and occasionally splinter into your bread. The food? Not bad. Not great. But not gruel, which is the baseline standard. You get pottage, a stew made of whatever didn't rot this week. Roast pork, stringy, smoky, slightly suspect. Boiled cabbage, because it's the law. And pies. Meat pies. Fruit pies. Mystery pies. The less you ask, the better. You drink. Ale, of course. brewed by someone's aunt in a barrel previously used for pickling herring. It's thick, warm, and slightly fizzy in a way that makes you suspicious. But it does the trick. The men tell stories. The women roll their eyes. The children run in circles until they fall over and cry. It's delightful. Eventually, someone produces a lute, or a drum, or just starts clapping in rhythm and demands dancing. You are pulled into a circle by someone whose name you vaguely know, but who smells like cheese and determination. Medieval dancing is a mix of skipping, hopping, spinning, and shouting "hey" at seemingly random intervals. You try to keep up. You fail. You trip over your own foot, collide with a drunk shepherd, and end up sprawled on the grass laughing with the kind of giddy exhaustion only found after 3 mugs of suspicious ale and 1 roast turnip too many. Later in the evening, it's time for games. There's tug-of-war, using a rope that's older than your grandfather and smells like wet dog. There's wrestling, shirtless and muddy and wildly unnecessary. There's Whack the Rat, a children's game involving a stuffed cloth on a string and far too much aggression. And there's the ultimate crowd pleaser, the drunk pig chase, which is exactly what it sounds like. 1 pig. Several drunk peasants. 0 dignity. By now, the sun is low. The fire is high. The air is filled with smoke, laughter, and the smell of spilled ale and lightly burned goose. The priest says a few words. Something about blessings, gratitude, and abstaining from sin. No one listens. Someone in the back shouts, "Tell that to the pie," and everyone cheers. You lie on your back in the grass, staring up at the stars. You feel full, dizzy, and oddly at peace. Your legs ache. Your head spins. But you're alive, you're fed, and no one has accused you of witchcraft in over 3 weeks. That's progress. Your friend nudges you with his foot. He offers you a bit of leftover pie. You accept. It's cold. Probably pigeon. Still excellent. And you wonder, just briefly, if life is actually okay. Then you remember, tomorrow, you clean up. And the pigs need feeding. And you've agreed to help patch the roof of the bakery even though you're afraid of heights and dough. But for now, for this one sacred, slightly intoxicated night, you are just a person. On the ground. Under the stars. Burping gently and covered in straw. And that, dear sleeper, is what a medieval harvest festival is like. All glory, all chaos, and absolutely no Wi-Fi. You wake up groggy, crusted with straw and vague regrets from last night's harvest festival, only to remember, today is your wedding day. Yes, that's happening. Your bride, a woman you've known since childhood, spoken to approximately 9 times and awkwardly bowed at during church, will soon be legally, religiously, and agriculturally yours. Provided the priest shows up and no one gets too drunk beforehand and tries to duel over the leftover pigeon pie. You stretch, wipe the remnants of dried ale from your chin, and begin preparing for your nuptials the only way a medieval peasant knows how, by splashing your face with suspiciously green rainwater and rubbing a sprig of mint behind your ears. Congratulations. You are now clean and ready for holy matrimony. Marriage in the Middle Ages is not what you'd call a celebration of romantic fulfillment. It is a business arrangement, a delicate social contract between families who want to combine their land, livestock, and shared sense of disappointment into one slightly better chance at survival. If you're lucky, you marry someone reasonably attractive, relatively disease-free, and only mildly unpleasant. If you're unlucky, you marry someone who smells like mutton, never blinks, and considers bathing a pagan indulgence. Romance is not the goal. Stability is. So is the dowry. Your fiancé's family is giving your family a small wooden chest containing 1 goat, surly, 2 pewter spoons, slightly bent, a single wool blanket, infested, and a promise that your father-in-law won't insult your fence again this year. In exchange, you're expected to provide her with a roof, a field to work, protection from wolves, bandits, and your own poor choices, and regular access to something vaguely resembling bread. You meet your bride outside the church. She's wearing her best linen shift and a wreath of flowers that's already starting to wilt in the heat. You smile. She looks at you like she's considering how long you might live. It's sweet. The priest begins the ceremony. It's short, efficient, mostly Latin. He says something about God, purity, the joys of lifelong union, and obedience, a word that makes your bride twitch slightly. You both nod. There are no rings. Rings are for nobility. You get a blessing and mild sunstroke. You kiss. It's quick, dry, and more ceremonial than sensual. You are now husband and wife. Time to party. Except, no. This isn't a royal wedding with 10-course feasts and troubadours. This is a village wedding, which means the reception consists of boiled cabbage, bread, and an awkward game of who gets to sit on the only intact bench. Someone brings out a jug of ale. You drink. You try to dance. You step on your new wife's foot. She glares. It begins. Let's take a moment to appreciate what marriage actually means for you now. You share everything. A house leaky. A bed itchy. A chamber pot full of dreams and regret. A future that includes children, back pain, and fights over who forgot to feed the pig. Your household is now a unit. A single economic, religious, and political blob. If one of you commits a crime, both of you suffer. If one of you dies, the other inherits debts, livestock, and, depending on the cause of death, some very pointed questions from the priest. As a husband, you're expected to be the head of the household. That means you must make decisions, grow food, pay taxes, not die in a ditch. As a wife, she's expected to bear children, maintain the home, manage chickens, also not die in a ditch. It's all very romantic. Sex? That happens. Eventually. But not yet. Not in the churchyard. That's frowned upon. You have to wait until nightfall. And after the bedding ceremony. Ah yes, the bedding ceremony. That timeless tradition where everyone in the village walks you to your shared bed, shoves you in, and watches just long enough to make it weird. Some traditions include a blessing. Some include ribble songs. Some involve throwing nuts at the couple, which is exactly as intimate as it sounds. Eventually, they leave. It's dark. You're in bed. You can't see anything. You smell garlic and nervous sweat. You whisper something sweet. She replies with a grunt. The mattress creaks ominously. And so begins your new life. Together. Forever. Or until someone gets gangrene. The next morning, you wake up early. No breakfast in bed. No honeymoon. You have turnips to weed, and she has laundry to scrub on a rock. You nod to each other like coworkers who accidentally carpooled. You feel a strange warmth in your chest. Not love exactly, but not dread either. A cautious alliance. We're in this together sort of feeling. Over the next few weeks, things settle into a rhythm. She manages the house. You work the land. She handles the accounts, which are mostly tally sticks and IOUs carved into fence posts. You fetch water, fix leaks, and try not to poison everyone with your stew experiments. You bicker, of course, about firewood, salt, and the mystery goat that keeps sneaking inside. But you also laugh. Once. Maybe twice. Quietly. And when a fever hits the village and your wife brews an herbal tea that smells like feet but helps you sleep, you almost say thank you. Almost. Medieval marriage isn't about soulmates. It's about survival. Teamwork. Shared misery. Dividing the chores so no one accidentally dies of exhaustion or forgets to salt the cabbage. It's not a fairy tale. It's not poetry. It's two people carrying buckets through the mud, arguing about the pig's name, and trying to keep each other alive long enough to raise a child who knows how to tell the difference between food and fungus. So, as the sun sets on another long, mildly disappointing day, you sit beside your wife near the hearth. The fire crackles. The stew bubbles. Your child cries in the background. The goat farts. And you sigh. Because somehow this is your life now. And it's not the worst. Not the best, either. But again, the bar is very low. You wake up on a chill-soaked Wednesday morning to discover that somehow, without meaning to, you become spiritually suspect. You haven't killed anyone. You haven't stolen anything that anyone noticed. But this is the Middle Ages, and piety is a delicate, erratic thing, like a badly sealed ale barrel or your cousin's temper. And unfortunately, the church saw something, or thought they saw something, or heard from that one monk who really doesn't like your face. Your crime? Questioning the relic. Or rather, looking insufficiently impressed when the priest unveiled what he claimed to be the holy shinbone of St. Fergus the Constipated. You weren't trying to be rude. You were tired. You squinted. You leaned in too close. You may have muttered something that sounded like "that looks like a chicken femur." Mistake. Grave mistake. The priest gasped. The altar boy dropped the incense. The widow Marjorie fainted, though, in fairness, she does that a lot. And now you have a reputation. You try to deny it. You insist you were merely awestruck. You say your eyes were watering from smoke. You suggest you had a mild seizure. But it's no use. The village has made up its mind. You are now what's known as in need of penance. The church, which runs everything from your soul to your local calendar, doesn't take these things lightly. Religion is the glue holding your miserable, dysentery-prone world together. God is watching. So is Father Elric. And so is Edith from the baker's cottage, and she never forgets a sin, even when she once slept through Mass and claimed the devil made her oversleep. So you are summoned. You walk, slowly, dreadfully, to the parish priest's house. You knock. The door creaks. He appears in a haze of candle smoke, holding a book large enough to kill a duck. He smiles. Not a kind smile. More the kind of smile you'd see on a cat who just discovered a slow mouse. You mocked a relic, he says. No, you whisper. You implied St. Fergus was not legitimate. I would never. You shall repent. And just like that, you are sentenced to penance. A sacred, humiliating, profoundly unpleasant series of acts meant to scrub your soul with metaphorical sandpaper. It begins with confession, of course. You kneel. You confess everything. The relic, the time you thought impure thoughts during Lent, the incident with the goat and the butter churn that you really hope no one remembered. The priest listens. He nods. He scratches something down in Latin, which you're 90% sure just says idiot. Next, you're assigned your punishment. A week of bread and water. Daily kneeling in the churchyard, even if it rains. A donation of 3 loaves of barley bread and a live chicken to the church. And, most dramatically, a processional act of humility through the village. You try to protest. But Father, you begin. He raises a hand. Silence, he says. God is watching. You are handed a candle, a large, waxy beast the size of your forearm, and told to walk barefoot through the village, in silence, dressed in nothing but a rough woolen tunic, carrying your candle and looking appropriately remorseful. You do it. Because what choice do you have? The day of your penance walk is cold. Of course it is. Rain spits from the sky like the heavens themselves are judging you. The road is mud. You step into it. It's not just wet, it's thick. Icy. Smells faintly of pig. Children point. A dog barks. Someone, probably Edith, mutters heretic under their breath. You trudge on. You pass the bakery. Marjorie won't meet your eyes. You pass the smithy. Old John snickers. You pass your own house. Your wife watches from the doorway. You can't tell if she looks ashamed or smug. Possibly both. You make it to the church. You kneel outside for an hour, holding your candle, praying with the kind of desperation normally reserved for shipwrecks and stomach cramps. You can't feel your toes. You can't feel your fingers. You can feel the shame. After your week of misery, the priest finally nods. Your sin is absolved, he says, like he's granting you permission to breathe again. You mumble thanks. You bow. You give in the chicken. He doesn't say thank you. And then, finally, blessedly, you eat something other than dry bread and regret. Let's pause here. If you're still listening, still awake, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Or drop a comment letting me know how many candles you'd willingly carry through the mud to atone for accidentally insulting a piece of old bone. Personally, I draw the line at 3. Anyway, penance. This whole ordeal is not just about your personal salvation. It's public performance. Medieval society thrives on shared morality. Sin and virtue are communal property. Your private shame is everyone's business. Penance is public theater, and it keeps the social fabric together, like gossip, only spiritually endorsed. There are worse penances, of course. Some involve fasting for 40 days, which in medieval terms means starvation with a side of hallucinations. Others mean pilgrimage, walking hundreds of miles to visit the holy toe of some obscure saint in the middle of nowhere. And then there's flagellation, where you whip yourself with ropes or thorns in front of an audience of grim-faced villagers who are there for the sanctity and possibly the entertainment. But you got off easy. Just a little candle parade and soggy shame. St. Fergus would be proud. assuming he ever existed, which we're not allowed to question. Again. So what have we learned? Don't insult relics. Don't squint at bones. And never, under any circumstances, suggest that St. Fergus might have been a goat. Because in the medieval world, sin is everywhere. Redemption is earned through misery, embarrassment, and carbohydrate donations. As night falls and you lie on your straw mattress, hungry, tired, spiritually scrubbed raw, you whisper a prayer. A real one, this time. Not out of fear. Not out of obligation. Just a small, desperate hope that tomorrow, maybe, no one will yell at you about bones. And for a medieval peasant, that's basically bliss. You wake up coughing. Not the polite kind. The kind of cough that shakes your ribs like an earthquake and leaves you tasting iron and existential despair. Something's wrong. You feel hot, then cold, then both. Your joints ache, your vision blurs, and your teeth feel like they're trying to escape your skull. Congratulations, you're sick in the Middle Ages. And you're about to find out just how little anyone understands about the human body. There are no thermometers, no antibiotics, no x-rays, no hospitals. Well, not unless you count a drafty monastery with 3 monks and a pile of rags that smell like despair. Your options are few. You can stay in bed and hope your body wins the battle on its own. Visit the village wise woman, who may or may not be one accusation away from a witch trial. Or, if you're lucky or cursed, you can call upon the medieval doctor, a man whose understanding of illness involves Latin, leeches, and approximately 0 actual cures. Let's start with your symptoms. You have a fever. A deep, rolling one that makes your skin feel both icy and molten. Your stomach has declared civil war on the rest of your organs. Your head throbs like someone installed a bell tower in your skull. You're sweating through your tunic and muttering things that may or may not be prayers. Your wife looks at you, frowns, and mutters something about bad air. Because that's what most people think causes disease, miasma. Dirty, nightmarish air, filled with invisible demons and the smell of rotting turnips. No one knows about bacteria. Germs haven't been invented yet. So the best way to cure illness is, obviously, to make you smell worse, so the bad smells leave. Brilliant. She lights a dried bundle of sage and dung by the door. You are now being smoked like a medieval ham. But the fever doesn't break. So it's time to call the physician. Now, if you lived in a major city and had noble blood and 5 spare pigs, you might be able to afford an actual trained university doctor, someone who wears fur-trimmed robes, misquotes Galen, and confidently diagnoses you with imbalanced humors. But you don't live in a city. You're a peasant. So your village's doctor is a man named Wulfric, who once spent 3 weeks in a monastery and now carries a sack of herbs and a bucket of live eels. He arrives smelling faintly of vinegar and regret. He pokes your forehead. He checks your tongue. He sniffs your sweat. Then he mutters something about black bile, looks very pleased with himself, and starts boiling a pot of water. Time to balance your humors. The medical theory of the day, if you can call it that, is based on 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Too much or too little of any of these, and your soul starts leaking. Or your brain overheats. Or your spleen just gives up. Honestly, it's all very vague. So to cure your fever, Wulfric has a plan. He will bleed you. You are about to discover the joy of medieval bloodletting, the preferred cure for everything from sore throats to demonic possession. He takes a knife, not a surgical tool, just a knife, and gently, lovingly, slices your arm open. You bleed. A lot. He watches the blood carefully. Too thin, he mutters. Too fast. The humors are in chaos. He ties a rag around your forearm and assures you that you'll feel better once your body has less of itself inside it. You don't. After the bleeding, Wulfric gives you a tonic made of vinegar, crushed mint, powdered bones, and what he swears is blessed honey but tastes suspiciously like glue. You choke it down. You see colors. Possibly God. You vomit into a bucket. Wulfric nods solemnly. The toxins are leaving, he says. Praise be. You are left to rest. Sort of. Because now comes the cure by charm phase. Wulfric hangs a string of garlic and rabbit teeth over your bed. He places a frog in a small pouch and ties it to your ankle. Why? It draws out the illness, he explains. You ask what happens to the frog. He replies, "It dies." Oh, that night, your fever worsens. You hallucinate. You see saints, devils, and your mother-in-law's cow, all waltzing in the candlelight. You wake up soaked in sweat, clutching the frog pouch like it's your only friend. The next day, your wife calls in Agnes, the village-wise woman. She doesn't speak Latin. She doesn't carry eels. But she does have willow bark, which she boils into a bitter tea. Willow bark, you'll be pleased to know, contains salicin, the chemical cousin of modern aspirin. So unlike Wulfric's bone vinegar soup, this might actually help. She makes you drink it. You gag. You survive. Over the next few days, you rest. You sweat. You pray. You curse. The frog dies. No one is surprised. Agnes returns and gives you a poultice made of mashed herbs and sheep fat, which she applies to your chest with surprising tenderness. She hums a lullaby. You fall asleep. And slowly, against all odds and logic, you recover. Because here's the thing about medieval medicine, it's mostly guesswork. Wild, desperate, frequently dangerous guesswork. But occasionally, someone stumbles into something that helps, whether it's willow bark or garlic or just staying in bed for a week. Most people don't survive serious illness. Not because God wills it, though that's the official explanation, but because medical knowledge is still in the throw frogs at the problem and hope stage. If your body doesn't heal itself, no amount of holy water or eel rubs will save you. When you can finally walk again without shaking, you step outside into the gray, damp morning. You survived. You have no idea how. The fever is gone. The nightmares have mostly stopped. Your wife hugs you, possibly relieved that she doesn't have to marry your cousin. And Wulfric stops by one more time. He smiles. "See, told you the frog would work." You smile back. You don't argue. You just nod. Because after everything you've been through, you don't have the energy to fight a man who keeps live eels in a bucket. You wake up to darkness. Not the cozy, warm kind where you roll over and think about pancakes. No. This is medieval winter, a bleak, soul-crushing slab of endless night, bone-sucking cold, and the smell of damp wool and slow despair. There is no central heating. No insulated walls. No electric blankets. Just a thin thatch roof, leaking, stone walls cold, and a fire that died hours ago and left you with a pile of ash and a renewed appreciation for modern climate control. You try to move. Your limbs protest. The blanket, made of scratchy wool and probably shared with at least one flea colony, does nothing to stop the cold from seeping into your bones. Your breath forms little clouds. Your toes have lost sensation. Somewhere in the corner, a rat is judging your life choices. You are now entering the hungry season. Because winter, in the medieval world, is not some festive Hallmark movie where everyone sips cocoa and wears plaid. No, winter is grim survival, with a side of rickets. It's when the days are short, the nights are endless, and every third thought you have is about whether you have enough turnips to make it to spring. Spoiler, you probably don't. Breakfast is stale bread. You gnaw on it with the enthusiasm of a dog chewing drywall. If you're lucky, there's a smear of animal fat. If you're very lucky, someone left you a pickled onion. Most likely, it's just bread. Cold, hard, and slightly damp, because humidity is a cruel mistress. You toss another log into the hearth, your last log for the week. Firewood is scarce. You've already burned half a fence, part of a stool, and one suspiciously shaped chunk of timber that might have been a neighbor's religious carving. Desperate times. So, before we huddle closer to this rapidly dying fire, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying this slow descent into historical frostbite. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and whether it's colder than 12th century England where socks were optional and pneumonia was a personality trait. Let's talk about why winter is the worst. First, the cold. Stone walls don't insulate. They just trap dampness and echo your regret. Windows? Covered in oiled linen or thin wooden shutters. Glass exists, but not for you. You're a peasant. If you want double glazing, your only option is to hang a second dead animal pelt over the hole in the wall. Your bed is straw, or hay, or a pile of rags. Your mattress smells like betrayal. Every time you shift, you dislodge a cloud of dust, lice, and ancestral sorrow. Next, the hunger. You're living off whatever you manage to dry, salt, smoke, or bury in the ground before the frost hit. Your pantry, and that's being generous, includes turnips shriveling, barley coarse and slightly moldy, a bit of dried pork fat, pickled cabbage that smells like feet, and if you're extremely lucky, a pot of pottage, a thick, never-ending stew made of whatever you can find, which is mostly turnips again. There is no grocery store, no corner shop, no online delivery unless you count sending your child to the woods and hoping they come back with something not poisonous. And hunting? That's for the nobility. If you so much as look at a deer the wrong way, the local lord might hang you. Or worse, fine you 3 pigs, which is like handing over your entire financial portfolio. So you trap rabbits. Or try. Mostly you end up catching twigs. Sometimes, you fish by cutting a hole in the frozen river and dangling a string until your fingers go numb. You catch one fish. You boil it. It still tastes like desperation. Let's not forget you're probably sick too. Winter brings coughs, chills, joint pain, and the kind of lung-rattling misery that makes you question your life choices. Your immune system is about as effective as a wet paper helmet. The local doctor prescribes hot wine and prayer. You have neither. So you wrap a rag around your neck and hope you don't cough up a lung before Easter. If your village is small, and it is, you might not even have a doctor. Just Agnes, the wise woman from Chapter 9, who's back with her jar of mystery herbs and an unsettling amount of confidence. She hands you a tea made from moldy bark, says something about cleansing humors, and wishes you luck. Let's talk hygiene. You're cold, but you can't wash properly because water is frozen and firewood is precious. So you stew in your own winter juices. Clothes don't get washed. They get worn until they disintegrate or physically rebel. Everyone smells like smoke, wool, garlic, and sin. Lice? Yes. Fleas? Absolutely. The occasional tick or intestinal worm? Why not? You scratch yourself with a stick. You dream of hot baths. You'd kill for a towel. Then there's the darkness. Days are short. Nights are long. The sun shows up late and leaves early, like a disappointed father. You live by candlelight, but candles are expensive. So most of your evenings are spent staring at the fire or each other in total silence, trying not to think about the fact that it's only mid-January and you might not make it to April. If you have a lute, you play sad songs. If you don't, you hum. Or you recite prayers. Or you listen to your neighbor Jeffrey talk about the time he saw a fox, which is somehow the most exciting thing to happen in weeks. And if it snows? You are truly doomed. Snow means blocked roads, lost livestock, and cold so deep it feels existential. You don't go outside unless you have to, and when you do, you wrap yourself in every layer you own, which is about 2.5 tunics and a goat pelt hat that smells like wet dog. Shoes? Thin leather. No insulation. Just you and the frost and the growing suspicion that your toes are going to mutiny. And then there's death. Winter is when people die. The old, the sick, the unlucky. The firewood runs out. The food spoils. Someone catches a cough and doesn't stop coughing. One night, they go to sleep and don't wake up. There's no funeral procession. Just a cart and a shallow grave and maybe, a candle if someone can spare the wax. And yet, somehow, you keep going. You patch your clothes. You stir the pottage. You tell your kids stories about summers that weren't so bad. You thank the saints when the chickens lay an egg. You pray for the thaw. And when the sun finally begins to rise a little earlier, when the ground softens, when the first green shoots push up through the frostbitten dirt, you feel something you haven't felt in months. Hope. It's weak. It's fragile. It's probably going to be eaten by a goat. But it's real. You survived another medieval winter. You are pale, hungry, lice-ridden, and traumatized. But you're alive. Barely. And that's worth celebrating.